In accordance with Second-Class Cities Law, Section 31, we're calling the organizational meeting of the City of Utica Common Council to order. While there's no specific agenda, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
To the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to call the roll. Aiello, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Colosimo Testa, and DeBrango, and Galimi, myself, all present. Welcome to the new council. Samantha Colosimo Testa is back as council at large, and we're welcoming a new council member, Katie Aiello, to the 1st District. Thank you. So the order of business, I'm just going to move one thing because there's obviously some other pieces, and there's multiple pieces, so there might be discussion. So I'm going to move 6 to the end of the meeting, just because the other ones usually move through, and we'll get through those. Does anyone have any reservations on that?
Mr. President, I'd like to appoint our city clerk as soon as possible to give you assistance.
That's exactly. All right, so the first order of business is the appointment of city clerk. You've been handed all pieces of legislation with blanks on them, so we can do that. So do we have a motion from the floor to appoint the city clerk?
I would like to so move.
All right.
I'd like to move that we appoint Melissa.
Sure, Tino.
She works. I can do it on any other day. but I can't do it, right? As our esteemed clerk.
All right. You guys, yeah, so. Okay, do we have a second? Miola's the second. Any opposed to that? And no discussion, so it's passed.
Looks like you got some help now.
You call it.
9 E's adopted.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next order of business is President Pro Temp.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Frank DeBrango for President Pro Tem.
Frank DeBrango is on the floor. Is there a second to that?
Second.
We have multiple seconds. I'm going to go with Burmaster. He had his hand up first.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Can I ask, who's sponsoring these legislations? We don't have that on our.
Anyone, whoever moves it, whoever
You can
makes the
move it.
motion.
You don't have to worry about it.
The motion to move, that is the sponsor, effectively. Yeah.
It should be
Yeah.
the full council if everybody's
Yeah, I was
supporting
gonna say
that.
full council.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
All right, so unless anyone says otherwise, a piece of legislation will be full council. I'll ask before each next one in that case. Thank you. All right, so we have a first and a second for Frank DeBrango for President Pro Temp 2022-2023.
Should I abstain and rebel?
No, that's fine.
Vote for yourself.
Any discussion? If not, your votes. What's up?
You don't want to vote.
Would you like the floor?
Oh, come on.
Qualification? Debate?
I was just curious, I just had one curious, I was talking earlier about it. Does it always follow, the pro temp always follow who's the president, is it Republican or Democrat in the past?
No, because there was a few times when there was a Republican. In addition to that, the only thing we have to do for an appointment is to make sure, say, for example, that he becomes the
Well,
mayor.
Hang on one second. Let me answer this as the chair first.
So,
Well, hang on, Councilman Williamson. Let me before you go on. Second-class cities, the same section for organizing the council, does in fact say the council elects president pro temp. So it is the business of the body. But you
Correct.
now have the floor again.
no, the question I have is, say Mike just gets moved up,
Mhm.
and he's a Republican representative, and then a Democrat comes in and takes the seat from a Republican. You know what I mean? It's just
Well-
almost like the same with the mayor, I was just curious how that works, you know?
Well, if you want to know.
Well, I mean, I think it's blatantly obvious if.
The
there's a
succession
Democratic
works
mayor-
the way it works. To answer your other question, we'd have to go back and see who President Pro Temp was under Pat Donovan. I believe that was the last.
No, it's Bill Morehouse.
And
Bill Morehouse.
Then I was under.
Bill Morehouse was a Republican when he was council president?
Nope, I think it was.
No, right, that's my point. So
No, I think.
you were President Pro Temp when Pat Donovan was, right. So it hasn't always followed that.
Can I finish? One more thing. You're close to
Yeah.
it. So, for example, if he can't, if he vacates his seat, Frankie DeBrango, because President Pro Temp, he has to run for next election in January. In addition to that, we have to replace Frankie's position
That's what happened
as
to
a
you.
Democrat.
That would
Yes,
happen to you.
Right.
exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did this a lot of times.
But if the mayor leaves, he's Democrat, he would be a Republican taking his place.
Exactly.
It
Yes.
really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, so it's just the succession of the city officers,
Correct.
basically.
Okay, no, I'm good. All right.
But I see your point, though.
I was just asking,
Yeah.
I always wondered that. I
Mhm.
had to ask that question.
All right. All right, your vote. All right, thank you. All right.
9 E's adopted.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, I do have a quick question for the clerk.
That's great.
If you could just have 1 second here.
I know.
All right, so before we move on, since the clerk was just appointed, I asked the clerk if she'd like to just announce her appointment for deputy clerk before we move any further, and she would like to. So, if you'd like to pop on the microphone.
David, will you say yes to the?
I would like to appoint David Butler as the deputy city clerk for Utica, New York.
All right. All right. So we're good there. All right. Designation of the official newspaper is the next thing on the agenda. Do we have a motion to fill that blank in?
I'd like to make a motion that the Observer Dispatch, the Observer Dispatch be designated as our official newspaper.
We have a second from Miola and DeBrango, but I'm going to go with Miola. Or that, Frank? Want to go with this, Frank? All right, we'll go with DeBrango. All right. Any discussion on this?
The only question that I had was, I don't know if they've already gone through with it or what, but I hear that the Rome Sentinel is purchasing the Observer Dispatch building. So would we have to reappoint them if that was the case, or are we waiting, should we wait until we get an official report?
All right, so
from
the answer on
Observer
that
Dispatch?
would be that at that time, if they met the subscribership, the council could consider a different official newspaper. But right now, obviously, there's only one choice.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
if there's no other discussion, your votes.
9 E's adopted.
All right, next order of business, Common Council Attorney, otherwise known as Special Counsel to the council. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to nominate Judge Anthony Guillermo.
Okay.
Second it?
Williamson was the second on that one. Your votes?
9 E's adopted.
All right, we got the party back together up here. We're all official. Yeah. All right. The next order of business is the acknowledgement of majority and minority leaders. I'd like to ask for a motion to, or if someone would like to report who the.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Frank Miola as the majority leader.
All right, so the motion second. Okay.
I just have some discussion on the floor really quick in regard to this before we make any of these appointments.
Well, let me,
Oh, it has to do with it because
it has to do with that motion?
Yeah, it has to
Okay,
do
that
with that. It
motion
has
is
to
to
do with
fill
both
in the
motions, to
blank
be honest
for
with
the
you.
acknowledgement. Okay,
Well,
your
I don't
question.
think anybody should.
Just
fill in
address the
anything.
chair. Go
So,
for it.
according to section of the legislation that was just proposed, proposed resolution number 13, it says that the common council shall select its members, one person to serve as vice president, as vice chairperson of the committee of the whole, provided that the person is not also elected to serve as chairperson of the committee of the whole. Now,
Mr. President, point
Usually-
of order, we're not there yet.
well,
Hold on.
here's, it
Hold on.
actually relates to it. Usually,
Well,
the committee, from the last piece of legislation, the majority leader ran the meetings, and if he wasn't present, the minority leader ran them.
regardless, here is how I'm going to drive this meeting. The acknowledgement of the majority and minority leaders selected by the individual parties will be voted on so that we can acknowledge that and move on. Then those people who are selected, if they're part of the discussion on the other legislation further in the meeting, then that's when it will be discussed.
Okay, just didn't know
Thank
if they
you.
can actually change that.
Anyone opposed to placing, who was the name? Sorry. Frank Miola as majority leader. Any opposed? Okay. Do we have a motion to fill in the blank for minority leader?
Republicans have to do that.
Guys?
Sure, I'll nominate Mark Williamson.
Okay. Is there a second? All right. Beatrice is the second. Any opposed to filling in that blank? This is obviously an acknowledgement. Okay, your votes on this piece of legislation.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to the appointments to the Urban Renewal Agency. Before we move on with this one, if the full council hasn't sorted this out yet, it's not the end of the world if this gets tabled.
We're all
but if-
set with it. Mr. President, I'd like to move on with a motion.
Perfect, all right.
Mr. President, for the Democrat for the Urban Renewal Agency, I'd like to nominate Mr. Robert Burmaster.
Okay,
And for the Republican, I'd like to nominate Mr. Joe Beatrice.
okay.
Second.
We have a second from DeBrango. Any discussion? Your votes. Thank you for the preparation.
9
on that.
yeas adopted.
All right. I like this. All right. Appointment to the Board of Estimate and Apportionments.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Celeste Friend.
All right.
Second.
We have a second from Burmaster.
And for the backup would be Burmaster for the second.
Okay.
right.
Do we have a second to the backup? All right. Put DeBrango on that. Okay. It's been moved. Your votes. If no discussion is had, of course. Who's that? Councilman Moody. Your vote.
9 yeas adopted.
All right. Beautiful. Appointment to the Board of Contract and Supply.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Mark Williamson for the appointment of contract supply.
Okay.
And second, Katie Aiello for the backup.
Okay. Your votes, if no discussion's had.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you. All right. Done, done, done. All done. Okay. The remaining business this evening are the rules of order. As always, the previous rules were adopted for the ensuing 2 years of the previous council, so we need some new ones, whether they're the same or new. Any motions from the floor? We need some rules.
I make a motion, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
I make a motion to represent, we want to go back to the old rules.
Okay, so you're referring to Resolution 10, rescinding and replacing Chapter 3-2 Administration, Article 2, Common Council, Division 2 Rules of Order. Neither of the rules need to be a rescind and replace, as the previous were ensuing 2 years. Regardless, is there a second to moving these for discussion? Beatrice is the second on that. All right, considering this is a different proposal, we've got some other ones. Would anyone like to go over these from the floor, discuss them? Has everyone read them?
Call for your vote, Mr. President.
Sure, I'd just like to kind of discuss it a little bit.
Okay,
I served on the council for 8 years inside the city of Utica. And under that time, Frank Mule was president of the Common Council, Michael Emy was president of the Common Council, and those rules worked, okay? We had committees that met on a regular basis. We had chair people that took pride into the committees that they represented. Over the past couple of years, I have noticed that the committee of the whole system was something that I didn't see that worked as well as having the actual committee process the way it was when I was on the Common Council from 2012 to 2017. 19. And in that time, I can tell you that I had a number of committee meetings. Myself was a chairperson. There were a number of people that were chairpersons at the time, and everybody took pride into the committee that they represented. While I don't have a problem with whatever rules of order come in place, because I will still hold my meetings if necessary. They don't actually have to have a quorum. You can still do your job as a council person, no matter what way the committee systems are done. But I could tell you that in the research and things that I've done in regards to these rules with my colleagues to the left of me, those I seen were best fit. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions.
Right, it's the original. Well, no, there's no date of it. They're just proposing it now, 10. Those ones were adopted 12 some odd years ago, or 14 years ago. 2020 they stopped being the rules. Yes, yes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry, Judge Garamone had a question. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, well, I guess that's that. Your votes on these rules of order. It's 6 yeas.
6 yeas defeated.
All right. Well, it's 6 yeas. Yeah, defeated. There you go. Okay, good. All right, we read it right. All right.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a
next.
motion.
All right,
Mr.
so
President,
those-
Mr. President, can I ask a question to you?
Yes.
So on this other paper that you handed out here, this proposed resolution number 6, I'm reading this. These are the rules that we currently have right now?
Hold on just a second. Proposed resolution 6. Yeah, proposed resolution 6. The reason these were printed and handed out was such that the previous rules, which were these rules,
Okay, but
if you read the top, they were adopted in 2020 for the ensuing 2 years.
okay, I just have
So-
one question. I understand
Okay.
it now. When I'm going through this,
Yes.
I'm looking at, like, for example, Samantha Economic Development, Harbor Point, URA. Now, I'm on the
Samantha.
Harbor Point Committee and URA.
That's because when they updated the rules, they never replaced or rescinded those committee assignments. Everything was left the same.
It was,
So,
and
okay.
that, you gotta remember.
So, going forward, I'm still on those committees.
Actually,
That's what I
back
wanna
up a second. Hold on. Number 6, the way it reads now, according to 13, I believe is gonna be amended.
Correct.
Okay, so let's back up just 1 second, all right? Please read 13, which is moved by Aiello, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, and DeBrango, okay? This is the one we just did, that was just handed out by Dell. Yeah, I did it. Yes,
Already organized, I see.
Your Honor, I'll give you one right now.
yes, please, by all means. Okay.
Right, I got yours. Yep, you're all set, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so, to address your question, Councilman Beatrice, and to drive this meeting, all right, and this is procedural. If ordinance 13 is going to be used to amend basically 6, someone needs to introduce 6 and use 13 to amend that on the floor, and then adopt the new combination of those as the rules for this council for the ensuing 2 years.
Mr.
Okay?
President Galimi, can
Yeah.
we actually have 13, Resolution 13 written in its entirety?
You have to acknowledge what the rules of order have been. If there's, and if you have, then if you want to amend them, you have to have a separate legislation to amend them.
Which they do.
And I understand
Which they do.
that's
Yes.
where
Mhm.
So we're all set.
But you're still not answering my question.
All right, so
We just voted.
I have your question. Yep, let the judge go, but then I have the answer to your question.
13
Sorry.
amends the rules that were adopted in 2020,
Yes.
and it's 50.
15 is something else. It's the fact that they're doing the committee of the whole with the vice and vice chair, et cetera, which they'll handle that. They're prepared for that. To answer your question, Councilman Beatrice, the rules of order always listed the committees, but those previously, well, except for last year, That listed the committees as they would report. But the previous rules did establish those committees. You'd have to ask, well, since this is on the table here, can someone explain the new proposal and take Samantha Clausen-Testa, Councilman Williamson, and Councilman Beatrice through 13 so they understand what's going on here? Someone want to explain this?
The current proposal for 13 is not to replace the pre-meeting conference. That institution will remain in place. The proposal of 13 is to make a singular committee system whereby which there will be one committee, which is the committee of the whole, chaired and vice chaired by selected members of the Common Council. So in that regard, it is a singular committee structure with one committee as opposed to the 7 or 9 that are listed currently.
Mm-hmm.
It does not replace the pre-conference meeting with the question of concern with regard to majority leader and minority leader. That will remain intact. The committee system as proposed in 13 will, like I previously mentioned, will provide one singular committee for the legislation moving forward.
I have one question in regards to this.
Hold on one second. Councilman Moody, anything else before I open it for questions?
Okay, so the only question that I have, so according to the rules that they passed in 2020, it said the following rules of order, and they hereby are designated as rules of order of the Common Council of the City of Utica ensuing 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since that 2 years is completed, okay, how can you amend rules that are no longer there? Which means that you would have to propose.
So, hold on. I have an answer for that. I already addressed the council and said if they'd like to do this, they have to adopt Resolution 6 as the current rules, then amend with 13 if that's what they would like to do. So does the council understand, Councilman Moody, you understand what I'm getting at here? So if you'd like to move forward with 13, we first need someone to move 6 and pass 6 as your rules, and then you can amend them. If you'd like to do it that way.
Well, there's certain sections in 6 that are also ordinances. So you can't amend, you can't adopt 6 in its entirety. 3-2-49 is an ordinance. That has to be done with unanimous vote. That has to be introduced.
Hold on.
I'd like to make a motion to consider.
But we gotta wait, because there's certain sections in the actual rules of order.
Proposed resolution number 6.
Resolution 6.
Proposed resolution number 6 is not the ordinance that you're referring to. Proposed resolution 6 is simply the rules of order to which the council used in 2020, 2021.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
So there's a motion on the floor for that.
okay. So there's a motion to move resolution 6. We have a second from Councilperson Friend. Well,
This is our
Councilman
previous-
Miola, no, it's fine. It's fine, it's all right. It's the organizational meeting.
Yeah, I just got a question.
Yes.
Am I, okay?
Yes.
Again, so the way this 6 reads now, there will not be like a chairperson for the
No.
DP? Okay, so,
No.
all right, I get that. So
Yep.
there's everybody,
Yeah.
who calls the meeting? You do?
No, it would be, according to 13, it would end up the, whoever's appointed to be the chair of the committee of the whole.
Okay, so
Wait.
that person's gonna be in charge of all of it. Okay, now, my next question to you is, that's fine, that's what you wanna do, but again, and I know it's coming up to me, that has nothing to do with the harbor. I'm on the harbor committee.
Yeah, well, that has nothing, that does have
Well, it
nothing to
says
do.
right here, I'm not on the harbor committee.
That's gonna be.
That's a mayor's appointment.
No, that's a whole
I'm just
separate
going
thing.
by what I'm reading here.
Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
probably just in the packet, maybe. Yeah, the Harbor Point Committee is not the discussion.
Okay, I'm just, I
Yeah.
mean, you're giving me something, I'm reading it. It
I-
doesn't say I'm on it, and I'm on that committee.
You don't have to report as an officer.
Councilman Beatrice, I did not hand you something that has Harbor Point on it.
Well,
There was multiple things handed out. I'm
okay,
sorry.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
you did, I'm saying I was
Okay,
handed.
somebody handed it.
Somebody handed me that. I just wanna make sure that I'm still on that committee.
Okay,
And I'm on, okay, all right, thank you.
all right. But that's the mayor's appointment.
Okay, well, I
It's
don't know. why
not
it's
us,
everything. Okay.
or me, or anyone
Okay.
else in this room. Okay. Councilman Miola,
Yes.
you are
Second
concerned.
number 6, and then we'll go right to 13, correct?
Correct. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. So
I'm sorry, so that's second.
now that now that number 6 has been moved and it's on the floor, it can be amended. And
Let's just do that, and then we'll hit 13 and take the amendment. Okay?
that's my point. So you want to
Yes.
use, okay, you want to do them one at a time?
Vote for number 6, and we'll vote for.
All right, your votes. Okay, yeah, 6.
6 yeas adopted.
Thank you.
Motion to move number 13.
All right, I did read number 13, and I have a parliamentary inquiry here, which I believe should produce an amendment to this. And again, I'm not interfering with what you guys want to do with this, but it does say in section A, I just read through this just now, I was just handed this. Authorize any and all committee of the whole meetings, setting dates, times thereof, provided each council member is given 24 hours written notice, and a quorum can be met. If committee of the whole is obviously the 9 council members, to have a meeting of that, it's gonna constitute majority of the council, which would fall under open meetings, you need 72 hours. So I mean, just, you know, just,
To amend to 72 hours.
yeah,
Second.
all right. Okay, any opposed to amending the proposed resolution number 3 to 72 hours? Okay. No one's opposed. All right. And just in light of that one, let me just read a couple more things here procedurally.
A second. Amendment passed. and
I said any opposed, so now you got 13. But just let me read the rest of it in case there's something else in there like that.
Because this doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
So, just a quick question, maybe somebody can answer this. So it went from 4H, which was select committees, to now the chairperson is the whole committee of the whole? So the one person is taking the full responsibility of the common council? I mean, does that give any other council person who has the equal right to call a meeting? I mean, to me, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, we're a body of 9 people. How would one person be responsible to call a meeting on behalf of 9 people? So for example, if I had a committee meeting that I wanted, I have to go through a chairperson in order to call a committee meeting? I don't have that right as a council person to do that anymore? I mean, something doesn't make any sense.
All right,
'Cause
so-
to me, it says chairperson of the committee of the whole.
Well,
The chairperson's now the whole entire common
hold
council?
on a
Yeah,
second.
because
Judge,
there is no.
before you answer that, I would like to offer Councilman Moody and Councilman Miola the opportunity to answer this since they are moving this. So from the council people who are proposing 13, how would that work?
Mr. President, of course, the committee, the council chairperson is just one person of the committee of the whole. Of course, any council member could request any type of legislation. First, it would go simply. Say the council person would like to present a piece of legislation to the table. After that, if the council feels that it should be referred to committee for discussion, the council would, of course, move it that way. And then we would have the council chairman would have a easy piece of legislation to vet with the department heads and whatever needed to vet that piece of legislation out for votes for the common council.
But to me, that still doesn't make sense, because I still have the right as a council person to request a meeting.
She can request
So
any meeting.
So
she
now
would-
I've got to wait as a
she
council
can-
person,
it's a piece
whether or
of
not
le-
that
if
person
the
calls that meeting?
The meeting would have to be on a piece of legislation, number one. Number two, if all you have to do is contact the chairman
then
to
what's the
call a
point of having
meeting,
9
and he would
people?
orchestrate.
Hold on, let him finish and then you can go.
And he would orchestrate the meeting as pursuant to whatever the council person would request.
Mhm.
For example, if they wanted to vet an issue without any legislation, of course, you contact Delvin Moody, and he would orchestrate, get the right people there, and have the whole group there as much as possible so we
That's,
can vet.
I'm assuming you're planning on appointing Delvin Moody to this,
Correct.
since you just said that.
So
Um,
Delvin's going to be the
All right, so
chairperson or
hold
the
on.
vice chairperson?
Oh, councilperson, I know this.
I'm just curious to know.
I know, this is all new, it's new to me too, so it's a lot of questions, but that's okay. Let me go back and forth here and share the meeting. As you were saying, Councilman Miola, I will give you the floor as soon as Councilman Miola is finished.
And after that's completed, so the meeting of the whole is wide open. It's full discussion for any council member to interject, and it helps vet and discuss any type of legislation that comes in front of us.
All right.
I'm all set, Mr.
Are you all
President.
set? Thank you. Councilperson, well, first, since you've already had the floor once on this, does anyone else have anything on this?
My only thing I have on this,
Hang on, Councilman Williamson.
The only thing I have on this is that if there's gonna be a chair and a vice chair of committee of the whole, then it should be the majority and minority. There should be, it shouldn't be, you guys already discussed who you're appointing already and stuff.
What's the point of having a
I
majority
mean,
and minority?
what's the point? What's the point of having a majority and minority leader?
Twice, I shouldn't even acknowledge them.
That's to run the pre-caucus meeting, Mr. Minority Leader.
So that's why the chair should be the majority, which is the majority, and the vice chair should be the minority.
Once again, that's your opinion. We like to appoint the people that we see fit to run the council of the whole.
This is horrible. This is worse than terminal.
All right, so hold on one second, because Council Attorney Garamone, I should say, in the context of the council, does want to make a clarification on what Councilman Miola said, and then Councilman Beatrice, you will have the floor next, and Councilman Williamson, understood.
I say this, I've read the 13th for Councilperson Aiello and Councilperson Testa, that the previous Common Council was meeting as a committee of the whole exclusively, pretty much last 2 years. They decided that. And pretty much they were doing that at the caucus, and most of the committee of the whole meetings were held at the caucus. And that's because they would be any guests that would explain what they were going to vote on were at the caucus. And I remember one time when this was mentioned to me a while back, I said, well, they said, well, this is only for legislation that has been referred to the committee of the whole only. And at the committee of the whole, as I read it, the chairman is responsible for presenting the people at the next committee of the whole meeting, or calling it earlier, or calling it a different date after it couldn't be resolved at some other regularly scheduled thing like the caucus. And it encourages all the councilmen to be there at one time, hear the plea one time, and then vote on the legislation. That's, I think, this does. And that the chairman and vice chairman, the vice chairman only comes into play pretty much to assist the chairman, and if the chairman becomes ill and cannot do this, then the vice chairman's going to have to do it, and it's very unlikely we would have two people that would be present. That's my understanding of 13. Now, if anybody has a different understanding of 13, because I'm seeing it here.
I think
Mr.
Judge
President?
Garamone, I do believe it was pretty clear. I think some of it was rhetorical that was being said. Councilman Beatrice has the floor next. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
So
Councilman Beatrice.
here's the one thing I wanted to say. We all talked about, okay, the committee of a whole versus the committee system. I think everybody here agreed that both systems work. So you guys, you just decided that you want to go, to the committee that we had last time, but now we took it to a different extreme. I know we all talked before that we were at least going to have a mandatory one meeting a month forced. It doesn't have to be on that day or anything. But now we're all of a sudden we're having one person call all the committees. There's nobody going to be in charge of a committee. That's the way you guys are having it now. Does that?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
That's how this reads.
Obviously, you guys got the
unless I
votes to
address
do what
another
you gotta
council
do,
member,
and
I'll
it's
field
not
the
a huge
questions
thing,
unless I
but
need
it
to.
really makes no sense at all. Really makes no sense at all.
Honestly,
Right.
it makes perfect.
All right. Do you have? All right.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I do have a question about this. I had a question. I do have a question. Just so, even though obviously this would fall under not the council president, but is this, Councilman Miola, Councilman Moody, you both referenced this while reading it. This now is limited to only legislation, so the committee is only to meet when there's legislation, not if.
No, there would be a functional, we have to decide whether it would be weekly or bi-weekly meeting, whereby which the council will consider whatever is on that agenda, primarily legislation as a group. But it will be also an opportunity to discuss city business as any council committee has functioned in the past.
Okay, thank you. You have the floor, Councilperson Friend.
Thank you, Mr. President. So here's what I see as the virtues of this, having worked with the Committee of the Whole meeting system for the last 2 years. is our committees didn't meet often enough. That's something that I've made clear to my colleagues. I thought we didn't get together as a body enough and deliberate things. So both in the ways of sort of deliberating legislation somebody's already developed, but also I'd like to be able to come to the whole group and say, hey, I've got a problem in South Utica. I don't have any ideas. Does anybody else have ideas for legislative remedies? What might we think about? Right, so having the opportunity, there are only 9 of us, the opportunity for all of us to come together, hash things out, whether it be actual legislation, which we've developed, or problems that we're having that we want to figure out whether there could be a legislative remedy for it. So I support this system. I've made it clear, though, and I think it's reflected in the resolution you have before you, that we need to be meeting quite regularly as that body, not be trying to overlap the committee of the whole with the 6 o'clock pre-conference meeting. That's what we did for the last 2 years, and I think didn't work very well with that system. So now what we're proposing is a system in which we still have a committee of the whole, chaired by one person who I trust to call a committee meeting whenever one of us wants one. And I, personally, and I think I'm probably in the minority of this, I'd be perfectly happy if we said that the first, second, third, fourth, and Wednesdays of every month, we meet at 5 o'clock. I think I'm probably the only one who would want to do that every week. But I'm perfectly happy with the idea that we might have really stipulate from the beginning, we're going to always meet on these Wednesdays at 5 o'clock to hash things out, and only if we didn't have something to talk about might we cancel it. So I think that this new system, a refinement of what we adopted 2 years ago, is going to give us the opportunity to get together as the 9 of us and really deliberate things. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I think will be good for Utica, and that's why I'm supporting these new rules that Councilman Moody developed.
Can I, Mr. President, may I have the floor to ask one question? Did you already
Yes,
have it?
Yeah, if you don't,
I'm sorry.
if you don't mind.
Okay.
Can we actually have a 5-minute recess?
No, anything that needs to be discussed can be discussed as a body.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, there's
Bring it up.
a
No,
body
go
of
ahead.
one party right now, and
No,
that's
but
the Democratic Party.
That's
That's
called the
literally
majority.
taking
That's
away.
federal, state
Well,
politics. I don't like
then
to
maybe
hear
that I
it,
think
but-
that we need
so
to.
let's hash it out.
I think that we need to
So-
maybe talk about maybe having a party caucus on, because to me, this doesn't make sense. And there's no way that I could support one
At this
person.
time, I'm not going to entertain
without
a
committee
recess
systems.
because I don't see a party caucus amongst myself, who's not a voting member, you,
Well, it's a
Councilman
discussion.
Williamson, and Councilman Beatrice,
No.
changing any
I
of
just
the
got a
caucus
question.
discussion.
And it is what it is. I got a question.
Yes.
Can you explain to me 2 things? Delvin, I know anytime we had a 5 o'clock meeting, you were up and had a hard time getting here. And you're a student in Colgate, I understand
Councilman
that. So-
Beatrice, just so that.
Okay,
this does
wait
not
now,
become
wait.
personal- No, address the chair with the question, and then I'll
Okay,
ask.
so I
Councilman
want
Moody.
to know that when we, number one,
No
this.
one's been appointed, though.
Okay, well, I thought they were saying, okay, and then I'll ask my other question
Ask
first.
it generally, for whoever the chair
Generally,
is.
generally,
There you go.
please tell me, the committee of the whole, like I told you, you all know how I felt about it. Tell me how this is better without having a chairperson for each committee. What was the purpose of that? You guys had the votes to bring it back to the way you did. Why did we have to go to that one step farther? Just explain that to me. It makes no sense whatsoever at all.
I will address the personal aspect of it.
And I'm not saying that. in a
No, it's fine.
disrespectful manner.
No,
I just
no,
wanna
it's
know.
fine. Luckily
It's
that,
more for discussion when the appointment comes, by the way. If-
no, I'll
Right.
address it now,
Yeah,
and
please.
that is that luckily I'm done with all my coursework at a 4.0, so I don't have the issues, thank you, I don't have the
That's
issues
great.
that I've had previously with regard to the 5 o'clock meeting. I think the other question was about the chairperson's aspect. I've witnessed numerous times where certain people have asked for committee meetings and they just were not called, right? And when the opportunity presents itself with regard to being able to lead the committee meeting, I know my personal commitment, I've been able to be at all the committee meetings that I've called, right, chairing them. I think I've done that unbiasedly, worked with you on legislation for feral cats, and so I can only speak to my leadership abilities with regard to calling those meetings and making sure that all the pertinent people are in the room. At the end of the day, right, I think a committee chairperson should have those those criterion. I know that I can do that. As a backup, right, if for an act of God, this is why we have a vice chairperson who can be there if in the event that I cannot.
Okay.
You like to move the legislation?
Wait.
Oh.
Discussion is closed. Did I say
Yes, you may, actually, before
I'll
you go-
volunteer as the
Oh,
vice
actually,
chair if
Councilman
anybody
DeBrango.
wants to vote for me.
Councilman DeBrango, Councilperson Ayala requested the floor.
Yeah, I don't know how valuable this is, but being new to this, I see the pros. I don't know if I've heard enough of the cons. I don't know if this is something that I'd be comfortable voting on being brand new to this, or if that's even impossible to abstain with that, but it's, or we figure out some.
Yes
sort
or
of
no
path moving forward.
is your vote, so you can't abstain
Okay.
from this one, but yeah.
Deal.
Yeah.
But either way, this kind of felt, I just would like to see more information, I guess, on all sides.
Alright. Okay,
Can I say one more thing?
I would actually, yes, you may, absolutely.
I just very quickly want to remind everybody, we always have the option as a council to revise our rules at any moment. We're not locked in for 2 years. We could decide 2 weeks from now, we could decide 6 months from now, a year from now, that this isn't working the way we hoped it would, want it to, and the people who don't like it now come to us and convince us, and we revisit it. That's always our prerogative.
All right, so before this is voted on, as these are the rules of order, I would like to, separate from the committee system, I would like to request that the council, after I chaired the current rules that are now on the floor for 2 years, I'd like to ask, even if it's just, left in the wind, address a couple concerns that not only I had, but were brought to me by multiple individuals, the public, etc.
Oh, wait, didn't they vote on the rules?
No, they haven't yet.
I
No.
thought you did vote.
No. They brought them in and they amended them.
No, I
But
thought
they haven't been-
I
they
thought
haven't
they
been approved
voted
yet.
for the.
Yes, the
of
rules are
order
in
as-
place, yeah, but they haven't amended them yet.
Yeah,
So,
that's on the
yes,
floor.
yes. So
Are you
before,
talking about this
yeah,
now?
before they do this amendment,
Yeah,
I would like to discuss how this may or may not affect the current rules that were already adopted. All right, so you've got the old rules in place already. We're gonna go to a committee of the whole system. All right, over the last 2 years, the biggest changes to the system of how the council functioned was not effective. I know everyone kept talking about the committees and the standing committees and all the differences in the committee system. That was not the biggest change in how legislation flowed, how we organize our meetings, etc. Now, over the past 2 years, we did not have a huge amount of business because we did have COVID through most of it, okay? And we are coming out of that, things are picking up. The biggest difference to how the council functioned, in my opinion, in driving both the old rules and the current rules we just used and we're going to use again for the next 2 years, was how legislation was introduced and how it was driven through the council. Previously, when someone proposed legislation, it went directly to the council president's desk to be reviewed by the council president, Judge Garamone, and his council attorney, and then it was placed in committee. That's when the time started ticking. It didn't start from pre-meeting conference. So basically what I'm requesting, after you guys finish this and make your amendment with the committee of the whole stuff, is consider reading section 3252 from the rules that were proposed by Councilperson Cosmo Testa, Williamson, and Beatrice. Reason being is that if you want to go to a committee whole, and that is your prerogative, you can do as you wish, you are the majority of the council. However, multiple times people got the pre-meeting conference. It was the first time people saw legislation, it's the first time you meet on it. Make the amendment in the near term so that the clock starts ticking from when someone submits the legislation, so that if your committee in a whole wants to meet prior to that next regularly scheduled meeting about the legislation, it can happen. I don't see any amendments to section 3252, so I'm assuming that was the case. The next thing is, throughout the last 2 years, it was nice to hear everyone talk, but there was no agenda for the main meeting. The agenda basically was remonstrances and appeals, and as we moved through the packet, all the legislation that was on the table from the pre-meeting conference, we'd bounce around and have everyone do their thing, rather than having the clerk read the legislation and have the meeting driven and organized. Towards the end of the legislative session 2021, we did move so the URA properties were always at the beginning of the packet so that we could move through stuff. The reason I'm bringing that up is that when we changed the rules entirely in 2020, we didn't really account for the fact that there used to be, quote, exceptions to the committee system. Those exceptions were things like stop signs, E&A transfers, URA property sales, legislation already vetted by URA, et cetera, et cetera. Those things went right on the agenda. So all I'm asking is if you want to go to this, consider that, because then our meetings are going to be able to flow better. I drove it the old way, and there was a flow to it. We could get through stuff, and the things that really needed discussion had discussion. The things that were boilerplate were boilerplate. So I'm just asking the council to consider those differences, because we had a lot of late starts last year, and we didn't have a lot of business. All right, I'm done.
I have one more question, in regards to the
I'm
general.
gonna give you the floor one more time
sure.
before this is voted on.
Before the general powers of the common council. So
Yes.
I understand that we're going to a committee of the whole assignment, and, or whatever you want to call it, I don't even know what this is. The council has still made him a body of a majority, correct? So what happens if I get 5 people and I want to call a committee meeting? I still have that authority as a common council person. So that's what I'm saying, that's what I mean. I mean, to this, it's very, that's why the committee systems made sense within the committee of the whole. And that's why I said I didn't mind the fact that if it was still in the committee of the whole, at least it gave each individual council person the right to call a committee meeting. This takes away that. So me, if I get a motion in a second, I can call a committee meeting still.
Every council reserves the right to adopt their own rules, and it appears that there's 6 people on the floor who want to adopt rules that establish committee of the whole as the only committee.
Sure.
That's what's on paper.
Correct.
Previously, the committee of the whole always did exist prior, and it was used, but what this is legislating is that this council for the next 2 years is going to adopt that as the only one. If there's
Judge,
no,
I went to the judge to clarify that because he's shaking his head, yes.
Okay.
I still have the right as a council person if I had 5 people to call a committee meeting.
I think, Mr. Councilman Miola, I think maybe an amendment that puts a provision there that any council member who wishes to convene the council of the whole and has the support of
4 other council people.
4 other council people as polled by the city clerk. We don't have councilmen call each other. As polled by the city clerk, can call a meeting of the committee of the whole.
Mr. President, Mr. Judge, at any time, any council members, 5 can meet down here doing the 72-hour quorum meeting. They can call a meeting at any time.
What?
There's nothing in this legislation that
that's
prohibits
not-
that.
Well, just come
Once
back to
again,
that.
there's
That's-
nothing in this legislation that prohibits it. So
Actually,
at any
the whole
time,
entire thing prohibits it.
Well, I
It
don't
does,
wanna
Frank.
confuse-
I mean, you can't just sit there and say that. It does. It takes away that
Just a
whole
minute.
responsibility.
Judge Garamone has the
I
floor.
don't
Judge Garamone
want
has the
to-
floor.
I don't want to confuse 2 separate things.
correct.
The common council has the right, just like the president does and the mayor, to call a special meeting, anytime. That's in statutory. This is different. The committee of the whole meets, probably will be at the caucus, maybe an hour earlier, maybe. But I agree that if a council member feels there should be a meeting within the time, we should have in the legislation that they may request that. And they inform the city clerk, who will poll the members to see if they want to meet at the time being suggested by any council. You don't have to say all that verbiage, but that's what I'm saying. And I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do that. And then the chairman will then call the meeting on behalf of those 5 members at any time that they think that they wouldn't get together. Because we also, I would think you would want as many council meetings. So far, you've almost had 100% appearance at the council hall. You've, almost all the committee meetings and all the things in committee have been discussed with you at the caucus. And that's really what's been happening. Am I correct about that?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
that's been the
So
gripe,
would-
yeah.
Would somebody make that amendment?
Well, so that,
Councilman-
I was gonna phrase it specifically as a section F to 3248, if you wanna do it. It's basically a combination of what Judge Garamone is saying, Council Attorney Garamone, and Samantha Colosimo Testa, Council at Large.
We put an E in there.
Maybe C. Oh, yeah, I meant E,
Put it under-
not F, sorry.
Put it under paragraph E.
All right, Mr.
Any
President,
council member-
why don't you make,
It needs to be in section 3247.
let's hear your
though. They
amendment
have a
first,
point.
and I'll see if we can motion it. How's
All right,
that?
so, yeah, I know, because I'm only going to suggest it. You guys have to move it. But let
Absolutely.
me address something separately that was brought up. This does not stop the majority from constituting a special meeting.
Oh, no,
Correct.
no, has nothing
And
to do
that
with
can be held by any five.
it. Has nothing to do with that. That's
Five,
what-
it's not the majority, it's any majority.
Any majority.
But this does distinctly change the fact that previously, any five could call a committee of the whole meeting previously. And that does change, Councilman Miola,
They can-
as
they
stated.
can call
So
it
the
anytime.
amendment would be section C.
Section E.
E.
Well, they're saying let's go to
Oh, you wanna go to
3247.
C? All right.
A committee of the whole, rather than putting it under the chair.
All right, go ahead, go ahead.
It'll
All right,
be
so-
under E. It'll be after D.
I'm just gonna, wherever you want to put it
E,
after, let me
All
just
right,
read it.
go ahead.
Okay. Any five members
Mhm.
of the common council constituting a quorum may call a committee of the whole meeting to be chaired by the chair and vice chair of the committee of the whole.
Very good.
You got that?
Of course,
I
that
don't
goes
like
under
that.
the 72
I don't like
hours.
that amendment because
All
I
right.
don't want to get into the same problem we had before. First of all, the rules of calling a special meeting
They have
are
to have five,
different.
as
Now,
told
just a
by the
minute,
clerk.
now, just a minute. Let me, as the attorney, tell you why I
I'm
don't like
with you.
it. I don't want to confuse. This is just a committee of the whole.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a special meeting.
It is.
But no, it isn't. It's not a special meeting.
got a chair
Because
and
it's not
everything.
mandatory, you don't need a quorum to have a committee of the whole meeting, number one. The committee of the whole is not a meeting because you cannot pass any legislation at a committee of the whole meeting. So you cannot pass any legislation. So it's not really a meeting. Special meeting, you can pass anything
Correct.
you
It's
want.
Only
to
for
vote.
discussions.
Correct.
They are, excuse me, they're not the same thing. All I want to do is make it very clear that if a member of the council wishes to have a special meeting and four other members agree, then the clerk will poll the members. I do not want council members calling each other because we don't want to get into that.
Right, you can't have five
conference
people
anymore.
conversing.
The
Exactly.
clerk will poll the members,
Mhm.
and if the members wish to meet at the time is being suggested, and if five members agree, then you will have a committee of the whole meeting at that time called, and who attends. Remember, there's no quorum required because there's no voting.
All right.
Okay, does anybody make that motion as I?
We all understand your motion, you can, okay, here, I guess we did it. And-
I-
Are you ready?
As chair, I do disagree with the quorum part, but yeah, please read
Well, you
whatever's
don't-
on
you don't
that
need a
paper.
quorum. The committee-
Yeah.
committee-
This is
the
amending
committee
section
meetings-
C.
There's case laws, the committee meetings don't get advertised, and they don't need a quorum. They are voluntary meetings, because no legislation can be passed, so really, they're nothing more but really meetings,
When-
in the word meeting, but they are not meetings in the sense that they are
All right.
any officiality,
Coun-
because you can't vote for anything.
Special attorney, with all due respect, if a committee has more, or has five or more members on said committee, it constitutes a majority of the council and does have to fall under 72-hour notice. We've been around
second-
that
it's second
a
place
million
cities
different
law,
times
section
in open
34.
meetings.
They cannot vote for anything.
Of course they can, but,
Okay, so let's not stop. I don't want to keep going back and forth with you.
Right.
I don't know what the
no, I know
case
they're
law
going to a
says.
committee of the whole. I'm not arguing that. I'm just trying to fix this other piece
I
that
just
you
wanna-
agreed with Councilperson Testa on.
Just
So, Councilman Miola, you have the floor.
I think Councilman
You have the floor.
Testa was right.
Yes,
Go
and
ahead.
that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to, you guys are in agreement here.
All right, we're going to amend section C. Is it okay? Make a
Or
motion?
add section C. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
add to section C.
All right, thank
Any
you.
council member who wishes to convene a meeting of the committee of the whole shall do so if they have obtained a quorum, and that the quorum is confirmed by our city clerk
Perfect.
to the council of the whole.
Yes.
That's all. Now you have to vote on that.
Did it say may call a meeting of the whole?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so that amendment is on the floor. You want to move it?
I'd like to move it, Mr.
All right, so
President.
he's moving it. Who wants to second that? Councilperson, well, there's multiple seconds. I'm going to go with Councilperson French. She's the one I heard first.
Vote.
Any opposed to this amendment? Any opposed? It's an amendment. We don't need to use the board.
Okay.
No one's opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. Section C has been added
We call it a
to
vote.
proposed resolution 13, which now, it had a first and a second, it was on the floor. Are we voting on this as amended?
Yes.
Oh, Councilman DeBrango has a question.
Should the chairman or a vice chairman be present or no?
Well, they would have to, they would still, 3248 would still.
Right.
Out of the
they-
five, one of them has to be present.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, essentially, the way I would interpret this is if the 5 people were not the chair, then he would still have to come and chair the meeting,
Correct.
even if,
And if he can't do it, then the second one will.
yes, exactly.
Can't do it. Then the
Okay.
third-
Right.
third meeting.
All right, so,
But what's the qualification to be the chair and the vice?
Mr. President, can we call for a vote?
we have, I'm calling for the vote on this because that's going to be discussed when they appoint those people.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
All right, that's not germane to this particular topic. Your votes.
Okay.
It's 6 yeas.
6 yeas adopted.
All right, and then for anyone watching this on YouTube, this is the organizational meeting, and we're discussing our rules of order for the next 2 years, so this is expected that these types of discussions would be happening as we're hashing a lot of this out for the first time as a group of all 9 people in the meeting. All right,
Mr. President, one quick question.
well, hang on, did you have a question first?
You answered
Councilperson Williamson?
You answered it.
Oh, okay.
So according to the old rules, it says section 3-2-49.1, committee member. And in this one, it says reserved, but it doesn't say that they're rescinding that section, which
We have-
talks about actual
We
committee
have to
member.
continue it.
So that's the only question, because now there's still that section in there because it never addressed taking.
Which section? Hang on,
So
this is
accor-
procedural, it's not, yeah,
According to according to proposed resolution number 13,
okay.
okay? If you look, it addresses 3-2-449.1, which talks about committee member, what constitutes a committee member. Each member of the common council shall be designated as a chairman of one entitled selected committee unless otherwise voted by a majority of the common council. So it just says reserved, it doesn't actually rescind that section of the rules of order.
It's
So,
replacing it, Mr.
Hold
President.
on,
It's not, because there's nothing replacing it with, so you should rescind it, because
Councilwoman,
it's still
what
there.
section are you
it
referring to?
doesn't have.
3-2-49.1.
Okay.
Let me go there, because this is procedural. This is not trying to throw a wrench in the works. Let's get this right the first time. Committee member. Each member of the common council.
3-2-49.1.
No, that's supposed to be there, reserved, because now it's only committee of the whole. So they are, in fact, leaving that section in place and empty. And there's nothing technically wrong with that. It's no different than the city code, which has sections that say, quote, reserved.
Right, but it says amending it to be reserved?
That's fine. That's what they're doing. That's,
Mr. President, I'd like to
Checking.
call for the
Doesn't make
next
sense.
piece of legislation, number 14.
yes.
Mr. President, to acknowledge the committee of the whole, the chair and the vice chair, I'd like to make chair Delvin Moody and the vice chair Frankie DeBrango.
Do you want it to read, Frankie?
Oh, I'm sorry.
My girl Johnny, Frankie and Johnny.
Okay,
Frankie.
so is there a second to that motion?
So can I ask a question on this?
You
too?
may, friend, you want, okay.
So-
Aiello
No, they're
is
taking it right
the
away, the council
second.
person, is
Wait,
what they're
can
doing.
I ask a
Councilman
question?
Shame on
Beatrice,
every
you have a
single person
question,
here.
you have
Can-
the floor.
So, Mr. Miola nominated Delvin and Frank.
Yep,
Do we have the right to
yes,
nominate anybody else?
you may also make a motion to nominate people, yes.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Mark Williamson to be the head of, I have no problem, I'd like to
Our vote has
nominate
come
Mark
first.
Williamson
For
According
the
to-
chair or the vice chair?
for the chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
You can't, you have to vote on this one first and then.
Well, you should have did one at a time like you did last time for majority and
Let's
minority
back up a
leader.
second. Back up a second. I'm the chair here. I'm gonna organize this. Here's how it's gonna work. We have a piece of legislation with blanks on it. Okay? We're gonna have a motion to amend, and there's a second, and then there's a motion to amend the amendment. It's Robert's rules. It is possible to do it that way if, now, and it's all preceding motions. So if Councilman Joe Beatrice gets a second and his is defeated, it goes back to the one you've got. So let's just follow the Robert's rules and it's fine. All right, is there a second to Councilman Beatrice nominating?
Second it.
All right, there's a second from Councilman Testa. Now, that only modified the chair, correct? You only,
Yes.
okay,
Yep.
all right. So, your votes, let's use the board in this because it's confusing. Your votes to amend the amendment to read Councilman Williamson as the chair of the committee of the whole. All right, your votes.
We didn't vote on Delvin yet,
No, because this is a vote to amend the motion of Delvin. You see what I'm saying? So if, what's happening here is if you vote no on this, then we fall back on the motion for Delvin to be
And
the
Frankie
chair.
DeBrango, yes.
So, yeah. So your votes.
What we vote on?
If you
Yes,
vote
you
yes, it's to put you in place. If you vote no, it's to vote you down and leave Delvin in place on the original amendment. All right, perfect. That's what I expected was gonna happen. Okay.
Defeated, 6 A's defeated.
Okay, now, that motion has been defeated. Thank you for the motion, Councilman Beatrice. The motion to, add Councilman, Moody as the chair and Councilman DeBrango as the
Co-chair.
vice chair is now on the floor again.
Clear to
Any
board.
other discussion?
Nope.
Any other discussion?
My concern is, you know, a council person, if they're the chair, have they been vetted out? Make sure they can stand on all boards, there's no conflict of interest?
This is a committee of the whole. You'd have to ask the ethics board that question.
Okay,
Okay?
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I know, I'm just letting them get it all out. I know.
Regarding what?
Okay, your votes.
No.
Well, what's up?
Conflict of interest regarding what?
It's definitely an ethical consideration.
Hold on a second. He said conflict of interest, that's why I referred it to, if he wants to ask them, he would have to ask them if there's a conflict of interest on something. Councilman Williamson, he's asking, do you want to elaborate?
Generic question.
No, I'm not gonna elaborate nothing yet, I'm gonna do my background first.
All right, and if it's not valid, it goes away. If it is, then you can, okay, thank you. That's it, it's the end of that discussion. Your votes on this. Okay.
6 A's adopted.
Okay, the rules are amended. Is there any other amendments to the current rules before we move on? Which actually we're done.
No, we got one more piece of legislation, Mr.
Oh,
President.
yeah, we do.
I'd like to refer it to committee number 15.
All right, 15. Where's 15?
Do we amend the 72 hour?
Yes.
Yeah, they did that. Yep.
Because this is an ordinance, Mr. President, I'd like to move to committee.
Hang on, where's 15? Hold on, let me get it in front of me.
Take your time.
Thank you, I know I had it here somewhere. All right, this is 227 has to change again. Yes, okay. All right, so now it's going to read. Common Council rescinds in its entirety section 2227. Okay,
Mr. President, I'd like to
Plan
refer to
complete.
committee number 15.
all right, so Miola is moving number 15. Would you like to?
Just refer it to committee with discussion in committee of the whole.
Because it's an ordinance, it needs unanimous on its first time.
Very good.
All right, but there's a motion to place it in committee.
But we don't even know what committees are.
No, there is. It's committee of the whole. So,
Is there a second?
second.
All-
Any opposed to placing this in committee?
Opposed?
One opposed.
Okay.
All right.
Motion to
Uh,
close, Mr. President.
it?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.